The Season 12 tier list. We're going to find out who is the best legend to play this season and who really isn't worth touching. So let's get to it. Of course, we're going to start with the D tier, and there's only one legend I'm putting in this, so I guess we could call this the dog tier. That of course is Mirage. Mirage, in my opinion, is the most pointless legend to play and have on your team. He's a very self-centered legend and all his abilities focus around himself, which obviously suits his personality, but in a team-based game, it's really just not fantastic. His bamboozles are quite easy to counter, his ult can catch you out now and again, but it will take a good Mirage to do that. Honestly, the only thing that's good about him is his passive, which is the invisible revive, but half the time you can still find the teammate that's been rezzed anyway through audio, so he's really not that great. For me, he doesn't really stack up enough and needs a whole rework to be considered as a higher tier legend. Moving on to the C tier. Now this might throw some people out and some people might be asking why, but I've actually put Lifeline in this one. This is the kind of okay tier, I guess. Now Lifeline isn't bad, but she's not fantastic and she's not what she used to be. Her passive has been watered down too much to the point where if your teammate isn't covering you, if they're not a good enough lifeline, you're a pretty easy kill. Her ult, for the amount of time it takes to actually get, and then it's got to come down and the whole map can see a lifeline package coming in, for what you actually get out of it is just not worth it. And her tac is not movable, it's too stationary. For the idea of being a combat medic and being able to go on the move, I don't know, it isn't for me, and I honestly don't think Lifeline is what she once was. In my opinion, her ult needs a rework and we need her old passive back, as annoying as it was, before she's considered a better tier legend. Next in the C tier, I'm putting Rampart here. Now we did see Rampart have a recent buff, which has completely changed her. She's made him a lot more mobile, but I think the only problem with Rampart is she's only good at locking down certain areas, and she's a very stationary character. Don't get me wrong, if you get in the path of her ult and behind her tacs, they can be very, very strong and hard to combat, but you can flush them out with some fuse tacticals or some thermites, some nades, whatever it might be. The other downside is that if your enemy gets behind Rampart's shields and Rampart's walls, you know, you're pretty easy to counter, and if you don't take them down as a solid Rampart, the enemy can use that to their advantage. Honestly, I don't think Rampart is great. She's too stationary, and although her ult is fantastic and will beam you, I can't really place her any higher than C. Next in the C tier is Revenant. Now, some people might be wondering about this because Revenant used to be really meta and a really scary legend. Don't get me wrong, his tactical is still very scary, but we don't see him as much anymore as we did in ranked in prior seasons. Honestly, I put this down to the changes of his ult and now the timer to let your enemies know when the ult is ending. This has made a huge difference in my opinion. You can kind of get some distance on your enemies and hope they'll come to you, and then wait for that timer to run out, or as it's running out, before you start shooting on them, and you're more likely to get an easy down because they think they have the backup of being respawned at a totem. On top of this, your enemy can also use your totem and kind of play you at your own game. His tac is pretty good, but it needs to be very, very accurate, and it's not enough for me to really place him any higher. Of course, when he's paired with Octane, he's pretty good, but on his own, I don't really see him as that much of a threat. Moving on to the B tier, it was pretty tough to place this one, but I've actually put Pathfinder here, and I know some of you are going to be really shocked at this. They're going to be saying, well, why isn't Pathfinder A tier or S tier? Honestly, in my opinion, the only great thing about Pathfinder is his tactical, and it's a lot of fun just Spider-Manning around the map. Aside from that, he doesn't really have an actual passive, because of course, before the extra recon legends got the ability to scan beacons, that was only his thing, and now he just gets a reduction on his ult, which I don't think is very fair considering some legends have 2 or 3 passives on their own. His ult is okay, but of course it does go in a straight line, and we've now become accustomed to other movement legends that can move around the map better, and he's very easily beamed on those zip lines. Although his hitbox has been adjusted over time, I still feel he's a bit chonky, and you know, he's still quite easy to take down. He's fun to play, don't get me wrong, but I don't think he's as good as he used to be anymore, considering all the other movement legends we've been given. Next in the B tier is Seer. Now, Seer is great, and he's a very powerful recon legend. I'm very glad we saw the nerf to his tactical though, because he had like 5 different abilities in one, which was absolutely crazy. But don't get me wrong, a good seer can play well, but I just think his ult can be quite easily destroyed, although it is quite powerful, and it only has a certain radius that you can easily walk out of. I suppose like anyone, it will take a good seer to really change the dynamic of a fight, but honestly I don't see him as much of a threat. Obviously his instant wall hacks are pretty nice. I just think there's better recon legends now, and on certain maps with more open fields like Olympus or Kings Canyon, I just don't think he's going to be as useful. Now we did see the introduction of Maggie this season as well, and I've honestly placed her in the B tier. I think she's got a very solid kit, but it's nothing extremely great and her ult feels quite weak. Attack is nothing crazy, it is kind of like a powerful thermite that can go through walls. Her passive is what we were most scared about. It's great for bubble fights. The actual recon ability doesn't last too long, which obviously is great because she's not a recon legend. However, her ult just feels too weak for me and she doesn't stand out very much as a character. I think she's well balanced and in a good spot. I just think her ult could maybe do with a little buff. Also in the B tier, I've put Fuse here. Now Fuse of course is the rival of Maggie, and he's not a bad legend per se. I think he's got some good qualities, but for me he's more of like an annoying legend to play against. I don't think he actually poses too much of a threat or can really change the dynamic of a fight. His tack will kind of get people out of buildings if they're hiding in corners, which is quite nice, but his ult is easily countered by the likes of Valkyrie, Wraith, Octane, Horizon. You know, you can just jump over those ults, which is kind of a bit of a letdown. You know, if that barrier was higher, it'd be even crazier. Obviously, he got a slight buff with the grenades as well, and having 2 tacks, but you know, for me, he's not anything special, and I just think there's better legends out there to choose from. Wattson is next on the list, and she's also a B tier legend for me. Although she had a buff, I was almost considering her putting in A tier, but I'm not sure she's quite there. I think the only reason I've dropped her down is just there's a lot, and I mean a lot of bugs with Wattson like all the time. Her kit is great if it's used right, but her fences can be easily destroyed. I don't know, her ult is fantastic, and now that it's unlimited as well and heals your shields is really good. But more often than not, there's always bugs with Wattson, and for some reason her ult seems to destroy teammate tacks and grenades and stuff like that, and it's super annoying. And it's the only reason I've kind of knocked her down. I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with her. I just think it's that she's always bugged or there's always something broken with her, and she's never really in a good playable state. I can't really look past the bugs, and unfortunately if she's not playing as well as she should be and as her ability should work, she's not really worth putting a tier higher. Now the last person in the B tier, I'm going to put Bang here. Bang is often considered a B tier legend. For me, her abilities and her kit is really fun to play. She has one of the best passives in the game in my opinion. I think it's super strong against close quarters as well. The only thing that lets me down is her tactical. Her ult is obviously made for defense and running away, or you can use it slightly attacking, but her tactical now has just become too weak. I think it's the introduction of all these different recon legends. She's not as good as she used to be, and you can easily be found through bang smokes through multiple legends now, and it just kind of spoils it. If that got buffed and that got changed, she'd be absolutely crazy, but she's very easy to counter now, and unfortunately the addition of so many recon legends has just ruined that. We're going to move on to the A tier now, and some of these again might be quite surprising. I'm expecting quite a few comments of, oh well, why have you put that legend there and you should have put this legend there, and I disagree with that. So let me know if you do disagree with any of these, and be also sure to hit that like button if you're enjoying the video. I've put Crypto in the A tier, which is probably coming in as a shock. We have seen Crypto had a slight buff, and he can now throw out his tactical drone, which is quite nice. The only reason I've put Crypto in the A tier is I think he's a very strong legend when with the right team. I think if he's on comms and with a solid team, he has the potential to be a very, very powerful legend. His passives of being able to tell you how many people are in the area, being able to pick up banners, is absolutely fantastic, and it can come clutch in so many situations. Now he can actually stick his drone out and he doesn't have to go into it. It kind of works as a mini Seer role in my opinion, and that's why I've placed him higher than Seer. I think the only problem with Crypto is if his drone's gone, he doesn't really serve a purpose to the team. Really, I was hesitant to put him in the A tier, but I just think he's a very, very strong legend with his drone. I think without his drone, that's the only thing that brings him down for me. But like I say, a very good crypto who understands how to use his drone correctly and where to place it and stuff can be a very, very menacing person to come against. In the A tier accompanying crypto, I've also put Loba. Now, I never really got on with Loba. I never thought that she was fantastic, but I've seen her a lot in ranked last season, and I've seen more people playing her. I think she's actually a very solid legend, and the ability to get the kind of loot you want very early on allows you to kind of play how you want. You have the option of having the best loot you can find, and obviously that means you can take more fights and play more aggressive, or if you want to, play a bit more defensively. Her bracelet is quite nice, and her passive, although it is kind of okay for her, doesn't really serve much purpose for your team. Honestly, it's nice to be able to see purple attachments, but I don't think it's the best passive ever. Her tactical is quite nice to get out of certain situations and being able to throw it through windows and stuff like that, which is why I've placed her a little higher. For me, it's just the fact that she can be a great support character and feed all your teammates with ammo, bats, all that kind of good stuff, especially towards the end game when you might really need extra heals, and that's the reason I've placed her in the A tier. I've also put Caustic in the A tier. Now, don't get me wrong, he's had a huge nerf and now his barrels can be destroyed, but I don't think that takes away from how good a legend he actually can be. Being able to lock down areas still, although his barrels can be destroyed, is still pretty menacing, and the fact his ult still is pretty strong and will disorient you pretty fast, it honestly can change the fight massively. Just being trapped in that gas sends people into panic, and it means you can take people down much easier. He's fortified as well, which makes him even more powerful in a 1v1 situation, but I still think he's going to be great for holding down certain buildings. On the bigger maps like Stormpoint, I don't think he's fantastic, but I think he's still a very strong legend despite his nerfs. I've also put Octane in the A tier. Octane for me just isn't S tier. I think the nerf to his jump pad, i.e. the audio change, has been quite substantial to kind of knock him down a little bit. You hear someone hitting that thing a mile away, it's like your PS4 full of dust and it's like a jet taking off. It's so loud that everyone can hear it. Obviously he had a stim nerf too, so it does take more health and you can't just stim around the map everywhere. I think he's a very strong legend, great for pushing fights when you knock someone, and his pad is still very good, but you are very alert that he is coming, and for me, I just can't place him in the S tier. I don't think he's strong enough for that, but I still think he's a very strong legend. I've also put Ashe in this category as well. I think Ashe, very similar to Octane, very similar kit, very strong and powerful. Obviously, she was introduced last season. I think she's come in at a solid spot, very well balanced. Her passive is great for kills and anyone going for kills. Obviously, knowing where other teams are, where people are dying is absolutely fantastic if you're a kill grinder, especially on the bigger maps like Stormpoint. Her attack is great. It can really catch people out and it does throw a long way, I think. Maybe too far in my opinion. It just never seems to end, and you can really catch people out, chuck a nade or thermite in with that, and you're really dealing some serious damage. Her ult is essentially a better version of Octane's in my opinion. I think you're able to get to high ground and kind of not take any damage because you're going through a phase, and it can obviously be used to back out of fights also, which I think is just a great ability to have. Obviously you can't go back through that, and I know it catches some people out, but you learn how to use her properly, and I think she's a very good legend. The last one in the A tier is Horizon. Horizon for me has a kit made for movement and she's a ton of fun. I've been playing her a lot recently. Her attack can take the whole team up to new levels, which is great for getting that high ground super fast if you need to get out of a situation or you're just moving around the map, especially for Olympus and Stormpoint. It can give you some real great height advantages and does allow you to actually get a bat off while you're up there as well if you manage to strafe well enough. Her ult combined with some nades or a caustic gas or some fuse tacticals can do a lot of damage, and in my opinion she's a very solid legend. She obviously used to be S tier when she was first introduced. She was very strong, but that nerf has balanced her and I think she's in a very good spot. Finally, moving on to the S tier. Of course, you're probably going to see all your favorites here, starting off with Wraith. Wraith, of course, has had a super high pick rate and been a super strong legend in Apex for a long time. Although they did nerf her tactical and her hitbox and all like that, I still think she's a very strong legend. Being able to phase out of difficult positions and re-rotate using her ult is absolutely fantastic and can really change the dynamic of a fight and save your team in certain situations. I think being able to aggressively push and back out and heal if you need to and lock that portal down to stop enemies coming is just so good. There's a lot of Wraiths that really don't play her correctly and just don't use her abilities right. I like to think of her more of a repositioning legend than I would a movement legend. I think that's where she really shines, and in my opinion she's going to be a solid legend that we see all the time. Bloodhound for me is also an S tier legend. Of course, Bloodhound has always been a solid recon legend, and in my opinion the best of all recons. This is purely because Bloodhound gets the movement with it. The increase in movement speed while using their ult is absolutely incredible and is a lot harder to shoot at in a fight, but can also chase down enemies or run away from difficult situations. Just being able to spot your enemies far away with that ult as well is great. Honestly, I think Bloodhound is just a strong character, and that's why we always see them in ranked and comp quite a lot. Gibraltar is also an S tier legend in my opinion. You rarely see him played in pubs, but he's always in top tier ranked or competitive. A good Gibby can completely change the dynamic of a fight. Honestly, his bubble is great in open areas. It can be used aggressively as a bubble push or defensively if you need some extra cover. And he just has so much health that you're really going to struggle to 1v1 him. Honestly, that guy is a tank, and more often than not, if you're taking a 1v1 with Gibby, you're probably losing it. He's got the gun shield, he's got the fortified, he is an absolute unit to try and take down, and more often than not, if it's straight 1v1, I'm probably going to lose that. Of course, his ult is super strong as well, and you drop one of them end game, use your bubble, you're dealing some serious damage. Pair Gibby with a shotgun to use with his dome and take those close quarter fights, learn how to bubble fight with him. Honestly, Gibby really changed my rank experience last season, and he's one of the reasons that helped me get to Masters. Finally on the list, of course, is Valkyrie. Now, Valkyrie, in my opinion, has some of the best abilities in the game. A legend that has jetpacks cannot be slept on. She can easily reposition and maneuver around fights with that jetpack. It's great for movement. Her attack can completely damage and stun your opponent, and it's great for teams in ranked, but it does completely take out the rotation and positioning aspect of certain games. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a very strong game skill to have, but Valkyrie just completely negates this and takes it out. Just that ability to drop an ult and just immediately get out of a situation that you're really struggling in is absolutely game changing, and there's no reason she should not be S tier. Honestly, it's quite broken how good she can do that and how she can just get away without thinking about her positioning and take a team with her. Obviously, if she does that in a Gibby bubble, it's pretty hard to actually shoot at them. Of course, she has the recon as well when she's in her ult, Aura flying off a jump tower, and she's just a very strong legend. Honestly, unless we see changes to her, she will be S tier for a very long time, and we will see more of her in ranked like we have been doing in the previous seasons. If you want to learn more about Apex Legends, you can check out more videos on my channel or by clicking on the screen now. But that's my tier list, that's how I view each legend. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.